many women that they feel like they have to be strong. They feel like they have to stay in situations that don't serve them. They feel like they have to, they feel like they have to fix everything. When Black women, we carry the burden of always wanting to be the superhero in the family, where we're protecting our spouses, our children, our mental health. And it had a tremendous effect on her even showing up as her true self. Why is it that women, they settle, they stay in situations that don't serve them, and in the end they become another form or a half form of themselves?
I knew that I was going to have to teach my audience or the viewer to unlearn all of those exploitive images and start to see Black women seeing each other. You're still going to step forward in that desire. What does the Black woman sound like when she is experiencing pleasure?
Não precisa reproduzir ou escrever o cinema com os códigos que estão pré-estabelecidos.
We don't need to make movies using the days, language, and codes as we were taught.
Porque se a gente pensa que somos corpos diferentes,
because if we think we are different bodies,
e se a gente entende que a câmera é uma extensão do nosso corpo,
and if we understand that the camera is an extension of our bodies,
nosso corpo e nossa câmera vai se mover diferente.
Our body and our cameras will move differently.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Zoe, the moderator for Black Femme Supremacy Film Festival for the Defining Femme portion of our film festival this year. Black Femme Supremacy Film Fest is an independent, homegrown film festival that empowers marginalized communities, particularly Black and queer filmmakers, through media. We've screened over 180 films to thousands of people in 70 cities in 12 countries, both virtually and in person, since we launched in 2018. You can read and see more of our work on our website, www.bfsfilmfest.com. Our 5th annual festival is running from September 4th to September 10th and is 100% virtual, so please get your tickets today. Joining us for our Defining Femme panel discussion is Jacqueline Smith, Director of Dear Younger Self, Mix Roti, Director of Code Switch, Jessica Jones, Director of On the Pulse of Life, and Brittany Barker, Director, Producer of Pursuit, a visual memoir. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start with getting to know a little bit about you all and your history of creating films and much more. Oh, please. Anyone can start. It's a freak. Anyone, yeah.
I'll start. So I'm Jacqueline. I am a creative out here in Los Angeles. I am originally from Philly. I moved to LA by way of Brooklyn at the height of the pandemic. And Dear Younger Self is my, first sort of presentation and as an emerging director. And I've worked in the entertainment industry for almost 11, 12 years now. But this is my first sort of project amplifying my own voice. So I'm very excited to be here and to meet you all.
Okay, so I'll go next. My name is Maicha, but I go by Mixed Realty professionally. I have been doing film since about 2017, so I'm coming up on my 5th year anniversary now. And I work exclusively with another director, my co-director. We work pretty much together on everything as a creative team. And yeah, I will say this is definitely my directorial debut as well. This is the first film where we've really been able to champion it at different festivals and really take it onto a larger platform. And so I'm just so excited. Our whole team, our whole crew is so excited for where Code Switch has gone and where it's going to be going, and just for it to also be at Black Femme Film Supremacy. And just like, I don't know, I really love to be here. I love film. It's a Black queer film. Black queer narratives are really important to me, really important to just like my own identity. And yeah, I just love to explore, the themes of life through this medium. So.
Hey everyone, I'm Brittany Barker, creative educator from Harlem, New York. I'm primarily a writer, a poet. So film videography is something that I started dipping my toes in probably about 3 years ago. I was experimenting with like a visual memoir series. It was called Lessons from the Body. And so Pursuit is my first time submitting work and actually feeling like the work is worthy enough to enter into conversations with other videographers. So I'm really excited to be here, to be selected, and to be amongst you all.
Yes, thank you. Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. So honored to be here talking with you all and having everyone see this film. I'm a director based out of Oakland, California, but I'm originally from Texas. And I've been working mostly in the documentary field since around 2011, but played many, many hats. So this is actually an exciting piece for me because as a director, it's one of the first pieces I've had screen at festivals and really do some kind of circulation, but I also often play the role of an editor that I also do in this film. So thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. So the Defining Femme block has been one of the original screening blocks that we have at Black Femme Supremacy Film Fest. And typically we have that because it divulges into the Black feminine identity and the experience, like specifically with femininity. And it's not exclusive to like biological, like cis womanhood, right? It's all like spectrums of femininity and Blackness that are represented in our film. So let's start with Code Switch. So one thing that I found interesting about the cinematography of the film is that it includes scenes of the protagonist looking at their own reflection. Once they have to switch like the appearance of their identity. Could you explain like why you included that element in your film?
Yes, absolutely. We included it for a number of reasons. I would say, first of all, we wanted to kind of juxtapose them kind of the spectatorship of people staring at them in the barbershop, juxtaposed with them staring at themselves in their own room, and kind of having that kind of visual diversity there. Additionally, I think it was really important that we kind of wanted to show the gender fluidity of our character. Our main character is a non-binary character, and they're trans. And within that, they have a spectrum of ways in which they want to present. It might be masculine, it might be feminine, and many times it's combinations and iterations of both. And we really wanted to pull the audience, pull the viewer into that moment with our protagonist and really allow our protagonist to touch the viewer in a way that was very intimate, and real and personable. And I think that in many ways we were able to execute that. And I really would love to, see how other people engage with that. And I think that it was really important for us to have our character have these kind of moments of stillness and silence where they're kind of sitting with themselves and having that type of self-acceptance, you know, and we really wanted that to come across. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And self acceptance is something that is essential to, the development of all life. And Jacqueline, I would love for you to speak on, the interviews that you conducted. How were you able to watch like the development of someone's former younger self compared to now? Like, please explain.
Well, for me, Dear Younger Self was important. It was inspired by conversations that I was having with my friends, and conversations that I had overheard, just about navigating life, love, and, just trying to figure out how to do this whole thing called adulting, right? And, and learning that there really is no sort of linear way to kind of do that. It's just doing it and figuring out your own pathway through it all. And so for me, Dear Younger Self, it was taking those conversations and providing a larger platform for it and really trying to open up dialogue to say, hey, you're not the only one trying to figure out how to navigate love. You're not the only one trying to navigate your career. You're not the only one trying to navigate possibly pivoting in your career or walking your purpose, what that looks like for you. And so for me, um, I always think that going back to your younger self, kind of revisiting your younger self, figuring out what did my younger self love to engage in, what was my younger self passionate about. And for some people revisiting their childhoods, it looks different. Some people in their childhoods, didn't really have the nourishing in their environment. So they may use the experiences that they had to facilitate healing. And those who had possibly, more positive experiences, they try to amplify that and maybe try to find ways to include that, incorporate that into their current livelihoods. And so I think really what Dear Younger Self asks audiences to do is sort of have that inner dialogue, but also encourages them to have that dialogue with their friends and their family. And as a way to sort of facilitate healing and conversation and connectedness.
Thank you. Thank you. And there was one thing that you mentioned that kind of like sparked my attention to that reminded me of Pursuit, Brittany. So, reflecting on your younger self can bring like an awakening in your adult life. But in Pursuit, as a young adult, like what was that moment for you? Was that a moment of awakening that the viewer was invited to experience with you, or explain? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say most definitely. It's similar to Jacqueline about transformation and the discovery, like how open you have to be to discovery to transform and to become a better version of yourself. And in the short film, I wanted to close the gap between, it's like a liminal space that we enter when we're transitioning because things are so new. And I really wanted to focus on the scenery. So I was road tripping from California through Arizona to New Mexico. And I thought, ooh, the red rocks and just the open scenery, the quote unquote barrenness, and how that feels very much like when we're pivoting, as Jacqueline said, and walking in a new direction. It requires us to walk in unfamiliar territory, unrecognizable territory. And it requires us to be courageous, to walk through the rocks, to walk through like pathways that are not necessarily like, that have not been walked before. So Pursuit felt very much like a pivot and a call to discovering like a new version of myself.
Mm, great. Um, Self discovery is a form of like healing and catering to, one's mental health. But on the pulse of life, Jessica Jones actually like focuses on Black women in the medical in the medical system. I think for like Jessica, that specific issue, I remember the only politician that actually called for like action is Kamala Harris. Could you give us more insight on your film and its intended purpose?
Sure, yeah. So I came up with the concept for my film when I was 7 months pregnant. And I was, when you're pregnant, you're just like I'm a first time mother. So there's like all this research, all this preparation that I was doing, like just like really mentally preparing for this very, very new experience. And I think there was this narrative around how beautiful the experience can be. And then there's also this counter narrative around how traumatic birth can be for Black women, all of the statistics that are very, very tragic here in the US around the experience. And it was a feeling that was just really emotional. And so I wanted to make a film that documented my own experience and incorporated just some of my own feelings because it felt like it was such a personal experience. I wanted to include that in there. And then I partnered here in Oakland with an organization called Beloved Birth Black Centering that does a sort of for us by us kind of approach to birth. So all the women in the program are given Black doulas, they're given Black social workers, they're just given women that look like them to go through this experience. And it's through a group. It's just like completely reimagining what this experience could be like. And I wanted to capture some of those women's stories. And so that's a lot of who you see. And I think to get back to your original question, my intended purpose is really to just add to some of the narrative that's happening around pregnancy for Black women and show like, yes, we need to talk about these statistics, but we need to not forget like we're people and that, this experience can be beautiful and is bad, and it can be very different than what we have it as it is now.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. The idea of like having children is becoming more and more frightening by the day. So like experiencing like medical discrimination, is like a huge fear, that like all of us can relate to, especially myself. Like I'm always on like WebMD, like freaking out. um, like doubling back to you, I would like to ask, do you believe in Western medicine or creating like relationships like around your pregnancy? Like, for example, working with a doula during like your pregnancy or a midwife. What would you recommend?
Well, I think so. I think, and I don't know if you all are mothers also, or even aunts, but I feel like one thing that motherhood has taught me is life becomes even more of such an individualistic experience. So I wouldn't want to like project what is best for anyone else, but I can speak to my own experience. Like for me, I gave birth in a hospital, but I had a doula there. And I will say that having her there, I think completely transformed the experience for me, and I would highly recommend it for anyone that has that. I mean, I live in California, so I feel like people are a bit. There are more opportunities for those kinds of things to happen. So I know that there are many places in the U.S. where a lot of these things aren't as accessible to everyone, and I think that that's something that also needs to change. But I will say for me, I mean, I think I grew up also in a household that definitely would believe in Western medicine, but I think also like how do you educate yourself and how do you advocate for yourself in those spaces? And I think especially as a woman giving birth, I think too often we're told that this is like a medical procedure when it's one of the most natural things that happen. And I think reframing your thought in whatever way you give birth, that with a midwife, with a doula in a hospital, that you're thinking, my body is capable of doing this thing, and I want to build a team of people around me that are going to help me make that experience the best thing that I can have. And maybe things are going to go wrong, but even when they do, I have people that I trust and that I feel comfortable around that are with me to go through that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like self-advocacy is probably one of the only like defense, one of the many, but like most commonly used like defense mechanisms in all of our lives. Jacqueline, I believe that like Dear Younger Self was like a reflection of self advocacy, and like could you speak more into like the element of self advocacy and self mothering, as a way of like healing?
Yeah, I think again, kind of going back to what I was talking about before, sometimes it's necessary to revisit your childhood to kind of figure out who you are now or who you're trying to evolve into. And sometimes that involves unlearning some things that may have not served or that no longer serves you or may have never served you. And now you're coming into your own and realizing, you know, something that I saw, that I was taught, or I was conditioned to believe, never really has helped me on my journey. And so I think that sort of that self advocacy comes into play with really sometimes having to confront parts of yourself that you're not necessarily ready to confront or that you're uncomfortable with speaking up and speaking about openly. And then for so many of us, especially within the Black community, it's hard to be vulnerable, right? Because those parts of ourselves, it's another revealing and another layer that we're just kind of coming into sort of, we're sort of just coming to the realization that, in order to heal, you have to revisit some of those tender parts of yourself. And so that's where that self mothering comes in as well. And I also think that along with the self mothering, some people don't know how to do that. Some people don't have the tools. Some people didn't grow up with the tools in doing that. And so I think that is where your community, no matter what you call your community, that could be family, that could be family that you've met along your journey, and so again, I think that was another motivation for Dear Younger Self for people who may have not had those tools or people who don't have those tools now to say, these are what other women that look like you are experiencing have experienced and are still experiencing in their journey, trying to navigate all these different aspects of their livelihoods. And they're okay. They're more than okay. And, it is saying, release some of that judgment, release the judgment that you have around not knowing it all, not knowing where sort of your next chapter is going to lead you, but just saying, hey, I'm here and I'm walking in it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. No, I do agree. And like self actualization, um, I think is a theme that is like very that is just something that we'll all experience throughout our lives, and it really matters on like how that like self actualization like appears in our lives. And actually, Brittany, I have a quote that I felt like represented this like form of like self actualization, but I would like you to explain this. If our energy is currency, then who is getting rich off of it?
Ooh. Where do I begin? That question came from many questions that I was grappling with in the past 2 years, but specifically in the last year, I quit my job a year ago. I was a dean of programs. I was creating youth experiences and training staff on social emotional learning. And I was just thinking, as many people started to think in the past 2 years or three during the pandemic, is how much control I have over my time and my experience in quitting my job. But then also in working from home years prior, I was noticing how much time I felt like I got back. And that just made me hypersensitive to how my job and just other social obligations was dictating for me how I would spend my day. And I thought it quite interesting too that many times employers try to capitalize on our prime energy hours, which is when the sun is up, and send us home when the sun is down, when we're too tired to even tend to ourselves. So the question, if our energy is currency, who's profiting off of it, is me trying to figure out if I actually get to eat some of the fruit of my own labor. It's also me questioning if I have a spot on my own priority list. So Yeah, it means many things, but those are the two like questions that I was thinking of in formulating that bigger question.
Oh yeah. No, like a 9 to 5 is, it's just like, I mean, that's the prime time to actually absorb vitamin D from the sun. So if we're like indoors or away from that, it is like in some way like kind of sucking the life out of you. And it doesn't allow you to like live authentically. Um, so speaking of living authentically, I want to circle back to mixed roti, and I wanted to know like how gender expression can impact our personal relationships. Despite how I'm presented today, I identify as a non-binary woman, and I can attest to the way that people will treat me when I'm more masculine presenting versus like feminine presenting. But making, such a personal like film like this, I would like you to, like dive into this like subject if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I definitely think that it's definitely a multi-layered conversation, right? Like, not only does it affect your relationship to self, but it affects your relationship externally, like to others. And um, I myself identify as non-binary two-spirit, and so I do think a lot about like how what capacities the people in my life have to accept me on the entire spectrum of who I am, and in turn, what capacity do I have as well to accept myself, right? And I do think that it's a subjective situation. There are going to be some people who can really see you for your full self, and there are going to be some people that you care about that just cannot. And I think that that really has to do with the context of their lives, and also the context of their ability to critically think or really be accepting. And I don't really think that it's really the responsibility of the person who is self-expressing or emoting. I think it's more so just your responsibility to really meet yourself wherever you are, and to really just show up as your full self and accept yourself for whatever and whoever that is, right? Even if it's changing or in process or in transition. And that's something that we definitely try to portray through our main character as well.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah, I recognize that in the film. It was really good. It was a very like um it was a beautiful portrayal of like what it could actually like feel like. Um so I think like a common theme that has been like represented in all of these films is like, the multiple elements of care that like the feminine spirit requires. um Even like whether it's physical, mental, gender wise, and in psychological, healing are some of the elements that I've seen. um, for all of you as directors to make films um, of this context, could you give me could all of you give me a story on like what inspired you to create like I think maybe we talked about a little bit of that, but what was like the epiphany? What was like the day, the moment that, just like moved you to tell yourself, all right, I'm doing this. I'm doing this and no one's stopping me. And let's start with Jessica. Um, please.
Sure. So, mine might be a little bit unique, but the film was a part of a series of films that were in one of the Smithsonian museums last year, all around the theme of imagining like a better future. And so I was responding to like a call for proposals for the film, and that was kind of the impetus that got me reflecting on what I would want to be making a film about right after I gave birth. And I was like, well, of course I want to do it on my birth. But I will say, like, uh, I've made other films, and I don't often make them kind of about myself or like my own experiences, even though I think like we're all making films about things that we're thinking about. But I just feel really lucky that I have this. I mean, I kind of have documented this experience, and I feel so grateful. So kind of in a very roundabout way, I think like maybe I was kind of meant to sort of make something that was a reflection of this period of my life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Brittany?
Yeah, ooh, that's a big question. I have no formal background in filmmaking, but I can say that what called me to explore it was just as a poet learning that language is limiting. Um, Sometimes when I'm writing, I notice like there's no word for this. There's no way to capture this feeling. And in seeing like the works of just like other prominent like Black filmmakers, I thought perhaps I can actualize this through visuals. Perhaps I can use the language of sight to bring an idea, an emotion, a feeling, a question to life. So, what brought me to filmmaking is exploring new kinds of language, um, and also just exploring how to actualize your imagination. Sometimes I might not be able to speak with to someone with words, but maybe if I give them colors and I give them the things that my eyes can see, then perhaps that can stir something in them.
Yeah, thank you. Mixed Roti.
I think that all of our films that we do always are like Black narratives. That's really important and at the core of our creative studio. But I will say, I think Code Switch is really born out of like a long history of frustration we've had with just like the lack of representation of like Black, trans, and non-binary narratives in media, and especially in the short film, independent film like world, and we really just wanted to create a non-binary Black narrative. I very rarely see them, and even if they are existent, I don't feel like they're often platformed at the same rate as like non-queer narratives, and so it really was just born out of frustration, I'd say, and we just really want to put as much of our resources and time and creative talent into telling these stories and bringing them honestly to the future generations that deserve to see themselves reflected on screen. So.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Jacqueline?
Yeah, so for me, I am reminded of a question that you asked Brittany earlier, Zoe, about what is the cost of your energy. And for me, I realized, I've worked in production for a really long time, and I realized that I have been contributing my efforts to these bigger companies and these projects. And I said, when am I going to start pouring as much into myself, into my own creativity as I am laboring for these other companies. And so, I think it was actually right before the pandemic. So it was around 2018 that with the help of a friend, I was just, like Mix Roti said, I was, conveying some of my frustration around sort of creating this space for myself. And she said to me, "What can you make right now?" And I revisited an idea that I had probably a year or some months prior. And it was Dear Younger Self, but it wasn't titled Dear Younger Self yet. It was born out of this idea, or from me reading a letter. So actress Felicia Rashad, years ago, she had published this letter that she wrote to her 21-year-old self. And she was just saying, in the letter, how, certain things were going to distract her, like romantic interest, and, giving her younger self advice, and talking about how the memory she creates now and the words that she says to herself now, the words that she hears, how it's going to leave an everlasting imprint. And so that really resonated with me, just because I said to myself, the things that I've learned now, I'm sure I could give my younger self so much advice, but what would that look like hearing this from other women, hearing about their experiences, hearing how them offering their younger selves advice could possibly help other women who are in the same age bracket, younger or possibly older. And so, sharing in those experiences, those sort of very personal experiences, helping other women as well navigate where they are today.
Thank you. Thank you. You actually answered a question to answer a question that I was going to ask as a closing question. Um, what is like in a utopian world, what is the ideal impact that you would like your film to have in society and life itself? And let's start with Brittany.
Why me first? I needed to think about that. Ooh, I want to, I guess, create bridges for whatever it is. So a lot of my work, the themes of my work is about transformation, is about collective recovery. And so it's to create bridges or to walk the pathway before other people walk it, or invite them to walk it with me, so that we can diffuse whatever fear, whatever feelings of doubt, imposter syndrome, etc. Whatever it is that stops us from like moving with ease and finding fulfillment in our lives. I want to be able to hold my hand out and do that through my films, specifically for Black women, people of color. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Mixed Roti.
Honestly, we'd really just love in the most idealistic world. I'd really just love Code Switch to allow every like non-binary Black and Black trans kid who's yet to really come into that part of themselves or yet to really feel like they have the space or the right to be themselves, to know that like their destiny is truly within themselves, and that within their fulfillment, within their self-acceptance, and that, you know, no matter what discomfort you may get from the external world as you navigate, you will always be able to have that home within yourself, and you deserve to. And we just hope that they are able to just see a reflection of themselves and know that who they are is valid and it's something that deserves to be protected, respected, and embraced.
Thank you. Thank you. Jessica?
I think for me, my goal with the film is that it really contributes to the conversation around normalizing the experience of having whatever you want for women, especially Black women, especially women of color, in a birthing room, home, whatever space that happens. That's like my number one priority, I think, for this film.
And last but not least, Jacqueline.
I think for me, I what has really been nourishing for me is community. And so one of the things in creating is really wanting this to be a sort of portal for community, to create community, and hearing these women speak, having these, you know, the advice and the insight that these women are imparting to themselves, encouraging conversations with people who are watching, encouraging them to, you know, have that inner dialogue as well. And, you know, for me, it's about how is this going to resonate with women? And I really, in creating this, I wanted to create a safe environment for the women who were featured to tell their stories, but also create a safe space for the women who are watching, because as I hope that this piece services many people across you know, different audiences. You know, I made this with Black women in mind. Black women inspired this. Black women inspire me every day. And, you know, if I could share something really quickly, you know, a young woman reached out to me. She just graduated college, and you know, she said, these successful, positive, bright, and intelligent Black women speaking to their younger selves. She said, and I can't help but to feel that there's a smidgen of hope for me. And so that is, you know, something that I hope for, that this reaches women of different ages who possibly are going through a time in their life where they're questioning who they are, questioning their place in the world, and knowing that, you know, they aren't alone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and sharing your art with us today. Jacqueline Smith of Dear Younger Self, Mix Roti of Code Switch, Brittany Barker of Pursuit of Visual Memoir, and Jessica Jones on all the on the pulse of life. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. I do want to remind people to please purchase your tickets for this for the fifth annual Black Femme Supremacy Film Festival. Our this year is Nourishment is our theme. And that is also where you can check out these amazing films. Thank you so much, and I hope to see all of you in the future, like socially, well, social media, yeah, social media, and more art from all of you, like amazing work. Thank you so much.